Hey everybody, welcome to Online Growth Systems. In today's episode, we are interviewing Dominik Lipinski, online growther, and he is a personal development coach. He does everything. He's writing books, he's got a website, he's got all kinds of businesses that he helps other entrepreneurs take their events and their masterminds to the next level. So let's just go ahead right into it. Dom, do you kind of want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Excited to connect with you, man. From the little that I've seen online, it seems like you got a great story and a great heart. So I definitely am excited to, one, be on the show and to get to know you. And as you've mentioned, my name is Dominik Lipinski, and I do help other entrepreneurs to scale their businesses, typically to 7 and past 7 figures to multiple 7 figures. There's a few other things that I essentially added into my company just in the last several months to make it a more of a event, kind of a full-size company outside of just building sales teams that sell high-ticket products, on the phone, 3,000 and up, to what I've done in the last also 2.5 years is sell higher-end premium products, what some people call masterminds, some people call mentorship programs, some people call coaching programs, whatever you describe it as, high-ticket services nonetheless of 20,000 typically and up 20 to 50,000 at live events at a very high conversion percentage of 50%, sometimes higher.
Wow.
And so that's been our little niche that we've been growing, and it's not so much of a niche, but we're just really good at what we do. And a lot of it just stems from listening, hearing people, and caring about people, and really connecting with them in the process that we do it. And and then also we have a PR partnership with a PR company we're doing right now to also brand our entrepreneur clients. And that's a new partnership that we took on, and also a digital agency that is an amazing agency at what they do. Is a friend of mine that's owned it for about 3 years. They do about $2 million a month in advertising spend for clients, currently and growing. So they spend quite a bit of chunk of money. Now, obviously, there's larger agencies that do that, maybe like Gary Vaynerchuk that does 100+
Right.
million. So that's mainly what we do. And I also have another actually business that I'm launching this year. There's some other. I have a small side projects, but the other business that I'm super excited about is actually working with people like yourself that are like young entrepreneurs. And of course, we welcome other entrepreneurs as well, if they're not young, but I'm teaching them in a way, like the universal laws of entrepreneurship, and beginning with integrity, which is very simple and should be at the basis foundation of all business. Unfortunately, it isn't not, and there's maybe other ways I can describe integrity as well, which we're probably going to get into this podcast on.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so super blessed, to be able to serve others, and through that, serve my lifestyle, my mission, which is what ultimately Zig Ziglar said: if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. Right? So, and so that's enough about me. I was actually going to ask you to just dive a little bit deeper into like you personally and about your business, because with obviously both you and I having a busy lifestyle, I haven't had a chance to really get to know you. So not only I will have the pleasure to do so, but also your audience will get a chance to hear that.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Dick Polipnick, and my main brand is Stopus Enterprises, and that's kind of the reason I started that brand, like that LLC, is because when I went to college a couple years ago, I had so many little side projects and businesses going on that I didn't want to carry a dozen business cards in my wallet. So instead of carrying a dozen business cards, I thought, okay, I'll make one like parent company that'll have a website on it. And then from there, it's going to be like a business directory where all my little projects are going on. So that just kind of tells you how kind of a scatterbrained entrepreneur I am. But like my main bread and butter, what puts money in my pocket every month is online growth system, which is the podcast run, the TV or the YouTube show, Facebook show, and that company is kind of like a double-edged sword. It one half of it is kind of like you said your friend was doing. It's like a digital marketing company. It's a media company. We do everything from building websites to producing video content to doing social media marketing. We do influencer marketing. We work with people like you, stuff like that to build other businesses and take it to the next level. And then the other side of the double-edged sword is our like an entrepreneurs community. So we have just under 1,000 people in our newsletter. We've got a couple thousand people on Twitter. We've got our YouTube channel, our Facebook show that we're starting, the podcasts, and it's just providing a bunch of free entrepreneur content, interviewing influencers like you, other entrepreneurs. I don't know if you're familiar with like Evan Carmichael. We just pretty much get those people on the show, and we try to get a gold nugget from them, from somebody like you that you have not distributed either yourself or somebody else has interviewed you. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get interviewed 1,000 times in your life, right? And there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of videos of you by the time you're 40. So our objective is to provide your viewers, our viewers, with a gold nugget from you that you would never think to give. So it's going to be kind of a fun process throughout this, trying to squeeze that. So
for sure. I'm sure it'll come out. And the interesting thing about that is, and thank you, by the way, for sharing. Now I have a better understanding of what you actually do. And there's I've been most of my I kind of come from the not so much of the online marketing world, which you can probably see by my current following. I mean, on Facebook, I have, close to like 10,000 followers because that's mainly where I would like drive traffic from. But like Instagram, I'm just, beginning to work on. But so I come from the old school kind of a shake hands, meet with people back when I was like, 21 doing door to door. And then got into like direct sales, and then from there into like marketing, and then obviously continue with sales. And this is what I ended up being really, really good at, and training others. So there's definitely a lot of nuggets that haven't been shared simply because I haven't been publicly sharing them.
Sure. Well, great. Then we're going to have plenty of content for this. My first question to you is, what prompted you to become an entrepreneur? I mean, kind of tell me about your journey. Did you start businesses when you were a kid? Did you go to college? You mentioned door-to-door, knocking on door-to-doors, doing sales when you were 21. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I think the very first thing that got me interested in entrepreneurship was, long story, I guess, take the story backwards a little bit. I grew up in Poland, so I moved here in 2005. Well, I didn't personally move here. My parents moved me here, and I was too young to make decisions on my own at that time. And obviously coming from Europe, coming to America, it's the land of opportunity, right? So coming here to the land of opportunity, for some reason, I've always had the ability to like have like the foresight of like the future, and also at the same time, I've always seemed to hang out with people who are at least 2 to 3 years older than me. Today I hang out with people that are much, much older than me, that are mostly like my business mentors or people I look up to and respect. And of course, I hang out with people my age and younger as well, because you got to have the law of 33%.
Right, Ty Lopez.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that said, it was the promise of the opportunity, right, which is ultimately what got me into entrepreneurship. And I think the very first time I caught the bug of entrepreneurship was when I came here and my mom was in direct sales. She took us to a few of those like meetings, hotel meetings, and they were just like regular people, that went from like working a job to being able to like make some of them like hundreds of thousands of dollars per month, and then I
Right.
was just like, okay, I'm like, that sounds a lot better than, than anything else that's being proposed to me at this time. And I've always been good in school, like, good to a point where studying comes easy to me, but also that at the same time that I realized that was part of my crutch as well, because I always felt like, I identified this at one point a few years ago, where I felt like I needed to know everything before I needed to take action, and the
Right.
reality is you do not, and you never will. And so there's definitely a lot of lessons, that was just one of them, because we were so trained to go to school, get a certification, walk out with a certification, and then that's when
Be
you're ready.
perfectionists.
Yeah, exactly, and that's when you're ready to like go out there and and finally do something in the world, where the reality is that's completely not true, and it's just a flawed system. That hey, it's building skilled workers, and hey, if I would need to, you know, be operated by a surgeon, he better have his skills right. So there's that, and like for example, attorneys. I've had in the last couple weeks had a few things that I needed to talk with some attorneys. Putting some new contracts, and it's just like, hey, I want an attorney that knows what he's talking about, that can explain to me some maybe legal language that I personally don't understand,
Right.
and shortcut my process, right? And of acquiring the knowledge. So there's two sides of that. I've just always knew that I'm not really gonna work for someone else.
Right. Yeah. You just had the instinct down in your gut. And I think a lot of people have that, but they don't always know what to do with it, because people feel overwhelmed and they're stuck in that system, like you're talking about, of being perfectionists, and like taking what they do know, whether it's a college degree or what the trade they grew up with their parents, and they feel like they have to do something quickly. You know what I mean? And that's not always the case. Sometimes if you just sit back and reflect what you're personally better at than other people, you know what I mean? And then take action on that. For you, it was, I'm assuming, people skills. Am I right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, people skills apply for anywhere in life. Um, there was actually funny thing. Going back to, I think it was our chat right before we started recording, was about someone who has my name, who also is in the personal development, like in Poland.
Right.
How we were talking about, like, that I'm the better looking Dominik Lipinski, but regardless, even of the fact that sure I might be better looking, there was actually a stage of my life where I got out of high school at like 17 to 19. I actually had an awkward stage, and where, like, I didn't go to college for that year, and I only went to college for 6 months, and I realized, this thing isn't for me, because I was like, I can read a book. I said my professors, because I went in for business management, and I think with a arts minor or something like that, because I was also a photographer at the time, and then I was like, my professors, all they don't own a business. I'm like, all they're doing is they're reading from a book. I'm like, I can read a book,
Right.
and I didn't want to.
You could even read the same books that they are teaching in class. All they're doing is just reviewing them.
Exactly. So then also at the same time, I was like, I'm not gonna need my degree, and because of the fact that I was always at least friends with a few people that like were older than me a few years, when they were graduating college, and they were sharp people, like, with good degrees. I mean, I never really paid attention whether they were great degrees or what their actual grades were in school, but they were sharp people. And they had a tough time getting jobs, and I'm like, something's wrong here. I'm like, I foresee that happening more in the future, and
Right.
so I was just like, you know what, I'm out, and I instead doing that, I didn't know much about At that time, I was like 19. I didn't know much about business at all. I just, took one business school in college, and then I get into direct sales, which thank God I did, because it allowed me to learn communication and, like, marketing skills. And this is back, I got really good with YouTube marketing back then, before, like, there was, trillions of minutes uploaded on every day of content.
Right.
And Facebook, was my jam back in the day too. And I literally I learned what it is to, to lead people, to train people, to have communication skills, to master sales skills. And mastery is also an interesting thing, because I think we're supposed to study our entire life, and become students. So I never really think I'm a master, because that sometimes can prevent growth, and I've also had that.
Right.
That's also one thing that, maybe that's a nugget, is I guess some of my friends that, like, come out of the woodwork back from, like, high school, or people that I've maybe hung out with when I was in college for a short period of time, they look at me and they're like, wow, like, you get to travel so much, and how do you do it? And I'm just like, I guess I just do it.
Yeah, you can't exactly pinpoint it, because it's a collection of so much knowledge and so many skills that you've just honed over years. It's not like it happens overnight.
Absolutely. No, absolutely not. And most people, like, and I realized it's a compounding of patience. I often laugh, because people talk to me about, like, leadership is, hey, I'm like, I wouldn't follow myself 5 years ago, or 6 years ago. How many years it was,
But it takes a big man to realize that. Like, you have to be really self-aware, which most people are 2 out of 100 on self-awareness. You know what I mean? But for you to actually, like, realize, step back and say, like, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have gone into business with me. I wouldn't have hired me or been a partner or whatever it is. Like, that takes a lot of, like, analyzation of your conscious, and, like, even of yourself, and how much you've improved. But most people never do that, because they stay the same their whole life.
They do. Unfortunately, they do. And part of it, I think, so I've studied people a lot through studying myself first, right? And I've just been to, I don't know how many personal development events / marketing events, probably like over 60, maybe close to like 70 or 80 over the last several years. And a lot of those, obviously, recently in the last years have been for a lot of, like, either meeting future clients, or meeting my current clients, or working clients' events and whatnot, and supporting them through the process. So obviously, transition. But one of the things that I definitely foresee that has definitely helped me, is just knowing that I know nothing. Because the moment we say that we think we know, then we automatically block the ability to actually receive new information. And I know quite a bit, and I hang out with some incredible people. Like, in a few weeks, I'll be hanging out with somebody who's made 100 million, that hangs out with, like, billionaires, and I'll be at his house, in Florida. And, like, and I'm coming there with a fresh mind. I was just speaking with a friend yesterday, who she's personally mentored with that individual for a couple of years, and she was telling me how incredible he is, and how to take most advantage of everything, like mentorship. And who knows who's going to be there. I've heard that, depending on how you feel about Trump or not, but I think Trump's right hand man, I think his name is George Rosso or something like that, I forget. He's going to be there, and, like, some other, like, big time people that are going to actually be mentoring us, inside of those 3 days. And it's a small group of people, right? That's going to be there.
Wow.
At a house. So it's like, no matter how much I know that there's people out there that know more than I do. And the moment,
and can teach it to you.
Totally. And the moment that like, I see anybody claim that they know something, then I just ask them, okay, well, how much do you actually really know it? Like, because knowing consciously and doing are two separate things. Most people think they know it because they know, like, conceptually something, but the way to actually tell whether or not you know it is, are you doing it? And that's, that's one of the things that has allowed me, and it continues to allow me, to just receive the right people, the right circumstances, and like the right clients and the right knowledge, right, to come, because I'm not actually blocking off the information, right, and that can also be spiritually or energetically, however we want to get metaphysical here.
Right. You can go as crazy as you want.
Perfect, because I sometimes can go off, quite metaphysical, because I've had some experiences myself. But yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to Donnie Epstein on quite a bit the last several days. Are you familiar with Donnie Epstein?
No, I'm not.
So so it's Epi Energetics, I think, because I literally was just looking at his website yesterday. So Donnie, he's got an interesting story. So Donnie, the first time I learned about Donnie was at A Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins, from the movie, I'm Not Your Guru. I'm not sure if you've seen that movie.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I'm Not Your Guru films Date with Destiny. It's a 6-day event with Tony Robbins. That actually, it's the only event that Tony actually does every single day. All his other events, either he does half of it, or he's not there at all. And so that's the only event that he actually does fully himself. And so I went to it not last year, but the year before. So 2016 December, right? Yeah. And he was talking about his wife Sage, how she had motion sickness, how she couldn't get on airplanes, helicopters, nothing, because she would start throwing up. And then he was searching for answers everywhere, and he couldn't find it until somebody said, hey, you should talk to this guy Donnie Epstein, who is just incredible at like healing people, right? And Tony's very strategy based, right? And very like practical. And although he's done some spiritual journeys with like ayahuasca and DMT with his high net worth clients, that not a lot of people know about, he's obviously, he knows a lot about spiritually, and I come to find out that a lot of not, I wouldn't say every single person, but a lot of successful people have gone through some spiritual journeys, because you have to, in order to actually get to some level of accomplishment in your businesses, because essentially you're battling yourself, right? To on an everyday basis.
You're your own biggest enemy.
Totally, and that's a spiritual journey within its own, right? So on its own. So anyway, so with that said, Donnie was talking about what actually. So it's interesting, because so Donnie has an interesting story where he was on drugs like most of his life, like psychedelic drugs, like heavy drugs, where he was just like knocked out. And I think by the time he was 18, he couldn't even like read and speak. And then he's in his, I think, like 50s right now or something like that, and he heals people with energy. And so along our spine is actually we have energy centers, right, which people call chakras, and there's 7 of them, right, and each of them are responsible for different part of like your, in a way, communication and like survival, right? So I'm not going to get too deep into it, but so he's got this incredible gift that that he can take out energy blockages, which, by the way, he actually proved my concept, because I've been studying the brain, the mind, and I've done quite extensive seminars and like neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis and other things, and through my personal journey. And I realized that that a lot of reaching higher spiritual levels actually has to do with understanding the mind, knowing how to harness your mind, understand your values, understand your beliefs, understand your past, understand your habits, like your patterns, because every day we live in a pattern. So
Right.
so with that said, um, with that said, Donnie, he essentially he said what I was literally like compiling over the last 6 to 8 months through some personal journeys.
And he just spewed it out all in you, and you had that moment where you're like, oh, it all clicks.
Which is what I was thinking, and basically what he was saying is that the brain, connected with the nervous system acts as a transmitter of energy. which is connected to the brain. So
So how do you apply that in daily life to help you,
perfect question.
whether it's personal development yourself or helping your clients, growing your business? Do you do some form of like self-awareness practice or meditation, or is it just the fact that you're researching it just kind of does that for you? I mean, tell me about how you apply that.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate you asking that. So there's several things to it, right? So thing number one is I forget who said it, but in the getting, so the quote goes like, "In the getting of something, you have to get the understanding." So I believe that understanding has to come from two streets, so to speak. One is the intellectual understanding of it, and then second is the actual experiential understanding of it. So what that means is actually applying the intellect, right? Applying what you're learning. So because that's really where wisdom can come from. It's like I didn't learn sales by just reading a sales book. I didn't really get good at closing 20,000 to 50,000, literally clients within half an hour at a sit down at a live event, at up to 63% closing rate.
Just by reading a book or watching a video.
Happened through literally, I don't know how many, probably close to 4,000 people. I literally was attempting and closing and closed. Obviously, not all 4,000 people, but in the last like 4 years, and it happened through that rule of mastery, right? Getting close to like 10,000 hours of doing something, right? So how to apply it, right? So one is understanding intellectually what is going on, because I think understanding intellectually, then putting it in practice is going to be able to allow you to connect the dots much easier. So that's one thing I realized. Now, number two is, yes, so meditation is useful and I highly recommend it. I meditate for 30 minutes in the morning after my cardio. And then I also do take a hot, cold shower, which is something I learned from Tony Robbins. So it's like super hot, then super cold, and then even hotter, and then even more colder. Like, and in Chicago, it's pretty damn cold here, especially
Right.
currently where I'm at. I mean, I'm relocated in Puerto Rico right now for cryptocurrency tax purposes. But in Chicago, when the water's, I realized that, I was quite of a, when I lived in California, which I just moved out of like 5, 6 weeks ago. Um, hot cold showers over there were like nothing compared to cold showers over here, because it's like if it's like 20 degrees outside, that
Right.
water is pretty damn cold, going.
I live in Minneapolis, so I'm not too far from you, or from Chicago, so I know how you feel.
Yeah, so what meditation does is it allows you to really become aware of where your mind goes. And I guess the trick to meditation is most people think, oh, you got to control your thoughts, you got to have no thoughts. Completely incorrect. I've studied with actually I did a 10-day meditation retreat in silence, complete silence, zero electronics, 100 hours of meditation in 10 days. I've studied
Wow.
with people that have meditated with Dalai Lama in India and have also were really successful in business, and then went through this like spiritual journey, and then like studied 50 different meditation techniques. And it's not about wanting to control your mind, because that's almost impossible. It's about being aware of what happens with your mind and so what works with meditation, which works great for me, is becoming more aware. And with the awareness, you have the ability to start seeing what comes up, right? And then at one point it does continue slowing down. You just become like more aware of everything. Now the
More in tune with it, right?
totally. Now the hot cold showers, what I like about it is it shocks your nervous system, and then it tells you not to believe what's going on in what's going on in your head, because nobody wants to take a cold shower. And then at one point they just become fun, because you're just like,
Right.
okay, it's just another hot cold shower. And Now, so how to apply what Donnie was talking about is and I was actually speaking with a couple ladies from Australia on Sunday. My friend that runs the digital agency, He has, these couple ladies. They have a company. They're growing right now through live events through south of Australia, and he connected me with them because they want essentially everybody wants to increase their sales. So I talked to quite a bit of people, and the task that I give them is because their sales went down a little bit after a couple events that didn't like work out for them, so they got into a little bit of a kind of a slump, like an emotion, like mindset slump, right? So so the exercise that I would give everybody is let's just say you want to focus on, and by the way, this works for any area of life, right? So if you want to focus on be more productive in your company, right? Maybe calling more clients or whatever it is that you're resisting doing. Let's just look at that, right? So whatever it is that you have a hard time doing or you can't get around to doing, then what you would do is you would pay attention to three things. So you have to promise to do this for 7 days, and this is, by the way, I give this to all my clients, this exercise. So you have to have it, like, ideally buy yourself a little notebook that you can carry with you, because every time you get stopped, like you're resisting to doing that thing or you're being distracted, which distraction is a form of procrastination. Procrastination is a form of wanting to disassociate yourself, right? Or like step away from that which you want to do. So you're essentially, with procrastinating, you're avoiding responsibility, right? So anyway, so what you want to do is you want to do three things, right? So the moment you notice yourself not being or resisting the thing that you need to do the most, is you have to first notice what is the image that showed up in your mind, because most people think it's the thought that shows up first, and then it's the emotion, and then it's either action or inaction, which is actually incorrect. I used to think that, and then I realized that the mind actually thinks in pictures. Because when we were babies, we didn't have language. We didn't understand language. We only remember.
You don't think in sentences. Yeah, you think of what you see. It's tangible things. Totally, I agree with you. It's all visual.
Yeah, so the mind thinks in an image. So the moment that, like, let's say you're doing sales calls, which is quite, probable for many people in business out there, right? Or you need to call that client or follow up with the client, right? So the moment you're about to, embark on the journey of following up with somebody or doing a cold call or whatever, there's an image that shows up in your mind, right? And that image, for most people, is like rejection, right? It's like some form of like, oh, they don't want to be rejected, therefore that image generates a unpleasant feeling of just like hurt or doubt or fear, or
so they have a losing mindset just going into it before they've even started the phone call.
Totally, right? So, and it's a pattern, by the way. This happens throughout their entire life, and it's all pattern, right? Because it's like if you had to think about how to tie your shoe every single day, you would go nuts, But the brain remembers how to do it, so therefore it doesn't have to think about it. Same with behaviors, right? So you have to have a notebook, and every time you get stopped, think, what was the image that showed up in my mind? So you have to, write it out. And at the beginning, you might not be so clear about it, but the more you do it, you'll become more and more clear, right? Then the second thing is, what is the emotion that showed up? And then the third thing is, what are the thoughts, right, that followed? Because that's actually the sequence: the image, the emotion, and then the thoughts, right, in that order. And then as soon as you start writing those three things down, and as frequently as you can, what you will find is you will start to see your pattern. And that's actually the brand that I'm creating this year, which goes right along with what I'm sharing with you right now, and it's the purpose to enlighten people, right? Because it's one thing for me to tell you, but it's another thing for you to discover it.
For yourself, right?
And then once you've reached that point, though, that can help you in every area of life, whether it's your personal relationships, your business relationships, your friends, your family, your finances. It really applies to everything, your happiness.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it goes across the line. And the more I study people, and the more I study myself, and the more I just study, I guess, humans, species as a whole,
Right.
I realized that everything is connected. Like, like everything. And there's actually a great interview by Jay-Z that he actually is interviewed for New York Times by another gentleman with the glasses. I forget what his name, but if you just type in Jay-Z New York Times interview, it's a great 35 minutes interview. And funny thing is, it's kind of, and this is actually what happens in the mind too, right? So the thoughts that you have release a signal to your nervous system, and the nervous system being a transmitting let's just say transmitting whatever station, kind of, right? It transmits a frequency, right? And then based on transmitting that frequency, it attracts the same type of level of frequency information. That's the exact same reason why, I was thinking Donnie Epstein literally a year and a half later circled back to me in my perception of life, right? And then he came exactly with the same information, because a year and a half ago, or not even a year and a half ago, I wasn't ready to hear that truth, because I didn't know that to be truth until I discovered it, right? So it's like the right information.
So it's almost like a ladder. Like everything that you can learn, it's like different rungs of the ladder, but you can't learn that next rung until you get there yourself. Is that like an accurate metaphor of kind of like the frequency you're talking about?
Which comes, right back to the same old saying of, the student's ready when the teacher appears, right? Or no,
when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Student's ready, the teacher will appear, right? Type of thing. So, completely, right? And that a lot of it has to do with the level of responsibility. I realized that, like, sure, integrity is one thing. People can be integritous. Also, integrity is kind of a level of responsibility. So responsibility is a huge thing from a point of, like, I was listening to Andy Frisella, the other day, with the motherfucking CEO podcast, and I love his podcast because I love his type of coaching. Like, I prefer, like, straightforward coaching. Like, don't beat around the bush. Like, I don't need to be handled gently. I'm like, I can take.
Tell me what I need to do.
Exactly. The responsibility part was that he, like, a lot of people just don't, like, he was talking about how in his company, even though he delegates something to one of his employees, and he has to take 100% level of responsibility for it. Like, I recently had a case where, and I posted this on my Instagram. I think it's somewhere in my, like, saved stories where you can see it, and it's basically like you have to. If you train, I was training new salespeople, right, to do to essentially work for my company, and in that process, I took on this one guy who was a great coach already in his life, and I was doing about $250,000, a year or so as a fitness coach, and I wanted to help him. I wanted to help him to make more money, and he was already a great salesperson. But because he achieved some results, he had a level of pride, and I used to have that level of pride, and then what life ends up doing is it ends up basically kind of like showing you that you shouldn't be so prideful.
It rounds back to what we were talking about earlier when we said that there's never a point where you can't learn something new. And he was kind of approaching the situation like, oh, I've already achieved this level of success. There's not much you can teach me that I don't already know. But what he should have been doing was going into the situation like, you can take me to the next level, like, feed me, you know what I mean? Give me some insight.
Yeah, exactly. So what ended up happening was, I knew that about him, right? Because he's not the first salesperson that I trained. Most of the people actually, almost actually 90, I've only trained a few guys that are younger than me. But most of the people I trained are typically, like, older, at least a couple years to sometimes, a couple decades,
Do you find that pride is a common problem with the people that you're training? Out of the 90 people that you've trained, how many of them have that as an issue?
It depends from a level of the salesperson. So, like, I've trained. So it depends. Like the people who actually are in sales as a living that are good, depending, and also depends on their personal journey. It depends. So, like for example, like I have this one incredible lady out of Miami, Shirley, and she's an incredible salesperson. Like every time I bring her to an event, she just completely crushes it. Like,
Right.
and she's just got a great attitude. We've also done some similar neurolinguistic programming training, and I've trained her actually for one of my old clients that I helped him to triple, almost actually quadruple his event sales. And then I end up staying in touch with her, and then she actually ended up leaving for him, starting her own business. And then, just because we had a close relationship, a year later, I started bringing her around to some of my clients' events to sell because she's really great at what she does. And she's got a great attitude, right? So she didn't have a problem with that. But the other thing, but as an example, somebody else who was similar to her age, that wasn't necessarily he had a great sales potential, but it wasn't necessarily a great salesperson. He had a great heart, right, for like really wanting to help people. But because he didn't have a lot of sales experience, because he came from a corporate world, making six-figure plus in a corporate world, having a really steady job, but at one point getting really just fed up with having a job, I started training him, and like, I trained him, and he was doing fairly well. He was actually closing about $500,000 a year in business and growing. Right, his first year, I think he did easily $500,000 in business. I mean, that includes just one live event. He mostly just like phone sales and stuff. But long story short, so when he first started to get results, especially at a live event, because you can, at live event, you can make.
You're pitching thousands of clients at once, right? You can get way.
Actually, no. So the type of coaching that we do, it's coaching / sales facilitation. So we decided. So Tony Robbins talks about which he learned from Charlie Munger, that was partners with Warren Buffett, is that the two things that grow a business are marketing and innovation, right? So live events that offer masterminds and coaching programs, they have great marketing because they get people there. But unfortunately, live events that offer high-ticket masterminds, that the owner offers those high-ticket masterminds, mentorship programs, services, whatever, they haven't really been innovating, like, at all. And the way they haven't been innovating is in offering these programs. So typically the way it happens is it's traditional to have a 3-day event, and then midday, day 2, there's going to be a pitch live from the stage, and then the people who are going to buy, which is typically for most people about 10% on average, and this is across the line. I mean, Russell Brunson, who owns ClickFunnels, is one of the best to sell from stage, and he, out of 9,000 people at the GrowthCon, 10x GrowthCon in Vegas for Grant Cardone, he sold about 12 to maybe 13% of people, right? So like him being the person he is, he sold 13%, right? So with that said, most people average about 10 to 15%, at their live events. In most cases, 10%. So, but think about it, right? So when you go to a live event, you kind of already know that. So this is like the backwards psychology that the event owners have. So the backwards psychology is, which is what they're missing, is they're missing a few key components. One is innovation, right? Because they're not innovating. They're spending all the time, all the energy, all the marketing power, all the advertising dollars to bring their clients through their process, to take them to the live event. But when they bring them to the live event, they absolutely do not innovate. They just follow an old system, and they only get about 10% of the closing power on most cases. Sometimes maybe 15 or 20 if you're really good, but you really have to be good.
So what do you tell them to get that percentage higher?
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting to, right? So what they're missing is, because they're just pitching from stage, how probable is it for you to buy something from stage? It isn't, right? Because you know that they're going to be pitching you, right? So in all types of sales, there's the 10 to 20% that are always going to buy. That's why most people average 10 to 20%. But if you really sit down with the client, and this is what we do different, is what our company does is we guarantee to double your event sales from what you previously used to. We oftentimes triple them, and I've almost once quadrupled them for a client.
Wow.
And yeah, and because we actually offer within the what we do is we offer one-on-one coaching at the live event. So clients that come to the live event, what are they coming there for? Obviously because they want help, right? They want business coaching. They're there to learn, right? So they're going to take every opportunity to sit down with a coach that's qualified, and we only take on top talent, or we train, the clients' coaches if they have them, to follow our process, right? So what they do is they show, they're obviously the clients already at the event, and then they show more care and attention for their clients, which is what companies and businesses should do anyways, right? But most people have not been innovating that way. So within the very first 3 hours of the event beginning, within the very first 3 to 5 hours, we already have sales of high ticket masterminds for clients. So we start day one within the very first 3 to 5 hours of the event beginning. We already have new members joining their masterminds
Wow.
versus waiting another full day, right? So we easily
Right.
double. So we easily double clients' event sales, oftentimes triple. And we also build, back end sales teams. But that's the one thing that I truly am very proud of, is because this is the enlightened entrepreneur, which is I was talking about earlier, right? Is this should be enlightening business owners that, like, hey, you truly want to build your business, right? Yes. Okay, great. Then you truly probably should serve your clients at a much higher level, right? Is that right? They'll be like,
Right.
yes, absolutely, great. So why don't we implement the one-on-one connection at your live event, which will guarantee to double, if not triple, your event sales? We brought one company, and this is actually in a partnership with my friends, from 420,000 that they were doing, or so 430,000 at their live event. The next live event at 850,000. The next live event, which was somewhat similar in the event size, $1.97 million, almost two. Well, we first closed 2.1 million, but then about 10% of people always withdraw, which is just normal for all business. So we
Right.
ended up with
Right.
about $1.97 million,
Wow.
uh, projected sales, right? And this worked for large events. We've done this at small events where I had a referral from a industry friend, that's done, one of my mentors, Tim Irway, who I've mentored with for a few years. She's done about, who knows, maybe like $85 million in online sales across all his businesses. He took on this partner lady, and she had an e-commerce that she was teaching people how to do Amazon, and then she was introducing Shopify as a new mastermind. So it was a $30,000 mastermind, and out of 12 people in the room, I helped her to get $144,000 in sales, out of
Wow.
just 12 people. And by the way, 60,000 of that was in her bank account in just around like 50 plus days. So she
Right.
collected
Right.
half of it, from them, right? Which is huge. It's like most small businesses would love to collect, 100,000 plus in a small event with some of their ideal clients. And hey, if you can collect 60,000 in your bank account in less than 2 months, everybody would be like, sign me up,
Right.
and
Right.
and we do, so we do really great work. We focus on delivering value first, and then softly, and smoothly. And when I said smoothly, reminded me some of the the funny things some of my friends say back in the day. They're like, "You just such a smooth operator," like when it comes to like sales.
Right. Yeah.
The sun is not helping here. Yeah, so it's really awesome because, what's awesome about it is when you look at people that come to an event and are confused and like want to help, but most people are just afraid to ask for help, right? Some of it
Or they
is,
just don't know how.
yeah, they don't know how. Some of it is fear. Some of it is just like, whatever, different reasons, right? When you provide that type of help and you can have that type of connection and you can double and triple sales, it's kind of like a double whammy, right? It's a win-win-win, right? It's a win for the client that's running the event. It's a definite win for the person who's being heard and understood, and their concerns are being brought up and they're being answered, and they commit to a larger vision and a mission for the next year to join a mastermind, and and of course us as well, right? Because we thrive on helping other businesses become successful, and what we're doing this year is putting all of that work that we've been doing just behind the scenes for everybody else into actually a digital form, right? So because I do want to be able to impact more people, and I realize is that with our training,
There's only one of you, and right.
yeah, I mean, we do have a nice little army of sales reps, and I'm just taking on some incredible people that have, trained thousands of sales reps. But there's only a, certain growth rate you can have. But with,
Right.
but with what we've done for clients, we can now do it for ourselves, and then all of this spiritual enlightenment stuff to enlighten people with just like my informations that I've been able to obtain about people, and just self journey and self discovery and awareness and responsibility. So I don't want to just share sales strategies. I want to do that and then also share all of
You want the whole package, right?
this now. Yeah, yeah. So
So, what is one example of a client that you took from struggling to really prospering, and kind of tell me how that client, relationship worked? Were they a little hesitant at first to sign up with you? Just kind of dive into that story.
I think most clients are hesitant, especially the ones that don't come from direct referrals. So, so I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of referral business, because when you're great friends with somebody and then that person refers you to somebody else, there's a level of trust, right? So that's worked very much in our favor. So it's definitely, so people that, let's just say, I meet at events, right? I went to Traffic and Conversion Summit, which that was, it feels like it was a couple months ago, but it was less than a couple weeks ago. And so obviously I met some people like randomly there, right? So so I think, so the best way to overcome the the skepticism of somebody that doesn't know you is show them social proof, and that is the work that you've done for other
Yeah,
clients.
show them results that you've gotten for other people, and then yeah, totally. When they see the results that other people have attained, they have like a sense of like, well, you can do that for my business too. Totally.
Totally. So I'm in conversation right now with someone whose name is Clint Arthur. So he already does run a 7-figure business, but he's mostly been running it himself. Like he's kind of like a one-man show, but he does have his wife, and then he's got a great business. So what he does is helps to brand you with celebrities. So like his next event, I think he's bringing Kylie Jenner too. And also he does events at NASDAQ, right? So with him, he kind of came through like a referral, but it was kind of like a cold referral. Somebody I met, and then somebody got to know me really quick, and they're like, "Hey, you should talk to this person." So for him, it wasn't really so, I guess, I wouldn't say it was so tough, because what you'll find is people who are doing, especially 7 figures, which he is doing, and people who have, he's an older guy too. He's been around business for decades, and what you'll find is they have a quick ability to be able to tell whether somebody is for real or if they're just bluffing, right? So him and I, we kind of kicked it off really well. He just, we literally spoke for I think like 10, 15 minutes. And he was like, he's like, I really like you. He goes like, I really like you. He goes like, okay, I think we're gonna do business. So we're first doing his launch. So he's got an event coming up here in a couple months. So we're helping him to fill that live event, and it's a high ticket event. I think it's like 10,000 to come to, and then there's obviously a fast movers advantage. There's a little bit of a discount if you're ready right then and there to pay for it. But so we're doing that, and then right after that, the plan is to help him to exclude him as the CEO of the business, which happens for a lot of business owners, and build a sales team that he just gets to manage his business as a business owner and work on his business, not in his business. So let me give you let me think. So there wasn't really, well, it depends, I guess, what we consider struggling, because I haven't really worked with clients that necessarily were like, I mean, so I guess when you say struggling, what comes to mind first is somebody who can't really, maybe who's not really meeting to pay their bills, or their business is really struggling, right? So they're struggling.
So let me phrase it like, how did you take somebody from good to great? How did you give me an example of a specific client that you've taken and you've doubled their event sales?
Cool. So one specific client would be actually Nick Unsworth, and that actually, so Nick Unsworth, he's originally from San Diego. He was actually struggling. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a great video testimony. So if you just type in Nick Unsworth and Dominik Lipinski testimony on YouTube, you'll find it. And so he was stuck because he's already done 3 or 4 events, and he was reaching about a couple 100,000 or so in sales, right, out of his live event, which is pretty good, Hey, but he heard about our service, what we do, through a friend actually, and that so far has been my most successful case study. That friend that helped him to, currently they do just about 3.5 million in sales from the sales organization I trained for them a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and they, they'll continue growing. So they're industry friends. Actually, one of my very first clients. From like,
Congratulations on that. Awesome success. Isn't that, and when we're in, like, you and I are both in B2B sales, and when you see your client succeed, it just makes you feel amazing. You know what I mean? And I feel like being in a B2C consumer world, they kind of get a little taste of that if they like their product or service. But when you help another business thrive, that's something special. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, absolutely. So, I guess to me, after a few years, it's become like, oh, it's just like normal type of thing. But yeah, totally. Always, and so okay. So with Nick, right? So Nick only wanted, so he actually had some sales reps. So jumped in literally 3 weeks before his event. So he was one of those like late comers. He's like, hey, I have an event coming up. Like, I need help now. I have a coaching team. Can you train our coaching team? No problem, right? So virtually trained the coaching team, couple webinars, flew in a day early before the event, spent the whole full day role playing with the coaching team, and long story short, his event ended up with projected 720,000 in sales, which is triple, right? Plus to almost quadruple. I'm not exactly sure what his previous event sales were. Maybe if they're like 180, then it's almost quadruple. But anyways, let's just call it triple, right? For even. So I would find, so that was almost like actually a quadruple, which I was really hoping to quadruple the sales, because it would be the very first client that we quadrupled sales. But that was one example. Another example would be the e-commerce lady, which she actually didn't know what to expect out of such a small event for like 12 people, and especially getting $144,000 in sales. I mean, actually, the funny thing is, once we already had like the very first couple people confirmed, yes, they want to join the mastermind, she was like surprised that they're even like joining a mastermind. I'm like, why are you surprised?
Yeah, you did that's what you wanted them to do, right? Yeah.
I'm like, you gotta tell your people like congratulations. She was like shocked that they're like saying yes. I'm just like our process works. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. So I'm like, go out there and talk to them and congratulate them on making a wise
Hmm.
decision. To moving forward, with us and whatnot, for your
Sure.
program. And yeah, so that was also great because she was a lady that, needed some cash flow and needed to jumpstart, her
And
business.
that was a great big chunk of change right away, like you said, the first 50 days.
Yeah,
Right.
the it was like I think 50 plus days, 50 some days. I don't remember whether it was like 53 or 55, but
Right.
she received in her bank account 60,000, right? So it's like so I mean that's freaking great, out of 100,
Yeah.
and that's like almost, yeah, we're approaching like 40+% of cash collected from
Yeah.
what she
Within the
was supposed
first
to collect the
60 days
entire
per se.
year.
Right.
Yeah, so
So I've got another question for you. So what got you involved in event sales in the first place? Were you working for somebody at one point that was doing what you're doing? Did you kind of just fall into it somehow? I mean, what made you, uh, you know, knowledgeable enough to do what you do?
yeah, I appreciate you asking that. Yeah, so actually, so for longer than event sales, I was actually training coaches and building sales teams. So I mean, I've been building sales teams for about 8 years. Yeah, close to 8 years. So the very first one I built was actually in door-to-door sales. I was a chief sales officer for a public adjusting company. Had about 12 people over there that I trained and managed. That was just like a regular corporate thing. So
Hmm.
long story short, I then got into because I wanted to work from home. I didn't really want to do door to door anymore and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And I at that point I was just leaving direct sales, like building teams and
But you could still use the same skills and knowledge that you learned in that job going into your new
all
business.
of that people skills experience was very useful to then for the client that they're now my client. They're doing now over 3 million a year, my most successful
Hmm.
client. From my team's production, like from zero, 3 extra million. I'm not counting what they were
Right.
already doing, like they're
Hmm.
already
Hmm.
doing about it.
That's directly related to your coaching and to your services. Right, I follow you.
So including me and the four other coaches that I trained for them, I mean, we did, I mean, close to like, I did over $1 million for them, probably close to like $1.3 million for the time I was working there, and I was really
Hmm.
just mainly the reason why I was closing was because I was mainly showing by example to the salespeople I was training, this is how you do it.
Hmm.
So it's like they were like shadowing me, and then they went on
It
to
just
do
was a
that.
ripple effect that what.
Once they saw you successfully doing it, they were to apply what they could visually learn from you into their own sales, and that's how you got
Yeah.
your first
So what
client
ended up
success. Yeah.
happening, how this event sales begun, was because we heard of it being done, actually at a Tony Robbins event, right? So Tony Robbins has this thing called like momentum sessions, but but they have a little bit of a different format, and it's more relaxed, and it still has some structure. But Tony Robbins events are for like 8,000 people, and like
Mhm.
and most of nobody's events are that big. I mean,
Right.
rarely ever, right? So let me move here, and so anyway, so we decided to implement this process and just give it a shot, and that's where that client went from their event, which I was talking earlier on our call, from 420 or so to 850,000. Just
Mhm.
literally next event that we decided to implement this, we doubled their sales. And by the way, we weren't really sure of what we were doing yet, right? This was like almost 3 years ago. It'll be coming up in 3 years in like 3 months. It will be three
Mhm.
years, right? So we already had an established relationship because we were building I was building a sales team for this company. They were like dear friends for 5 years and known them for 2 years beforehand. And we were handling all of their lead flow and converting them into $2,000 product at the time. Then it was the 3,000, then from 3,000 to 15, and 30,000, right? And then now they have a $50,000 offer as well. So essentially, because we had that relationship built already, they then just trusted us to basically give this a shot, right? To do this at the live event, and through trial and error of doing it, we've been able to, and I say we because I have some great teammates as well that are just incredible, and I trust, and we've been able to like really just do that. I've heard this quote the other day: "It's the 2 millimeter changes that help you to get to the top." Right, and we've been able to really master and perfect that to like a science, and yeah.
And well, that can be, I've heard several different ways that that's been applied. Like another guy that we've interviewed here on the show, he's a really a big fan. He owns a big manufacturing company, and he does something called lean manufacturing, where they look for a 2-second improvement every single day. Every employee has to come up with something that's going to save them 2 seconds a day. At the end of the year, if you have 50 employees saving 2 seconds every single day, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of payroll. That's a lot better production. You know what I mean? And just like how you were saying, that 2 millimeter thing brings you to the top. Yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett, he did like the 1% improvement a day, and he's the best investor of all time.
Yeah.
So
No, totally. Yeah, totally. The small changes compounded over time will bring the most results, and so we've learned some really cool things over time with the event space on how to make, how to also design the perfect masterminds. I recently designed a perfect mastermind. What I thought was like, if I were to design my own masterminds, I kind of like, he only had a $10,000 offer that he was offering for about a year to his clients. He had about I think maybe $250,000 to $300,000 business his first year, which is pretty successful for his first year. And then he was doing his very first live event, and he just trusted, he was like, hey, he was like, we'll go with everything that you're choosing to design for a $30,000 and a $50,000 offer with some retreats, with him. And I said, cool. So I just designed a mastermind as if it was mine. Like, what would I want to see, right, for his audience, right, which is entrepreneurship, authors, and speakers as well. And in his first event, we got about $230,000 in projected sales from his very first event. And
no way.
Yeah, and that's a weekend's worth, So yeah,
So what is one book that you would gift somebody who's starting out, and you say, you have to read this book, it's going to help you a lot?
I think, let's see, one book. What comes to mind is As a Man Thinketh is definitely one book. Because it has to do with, As a Man Thinketh, and also, Think You Grow Rich, right? So that's kind of like two sides of the story, right? Because there's the intellectual, and then there's also the practical application, and the practical application of thinking is accepting, and that's like kind of like accepting, like in your heart spiritually, like, hey, I deserve this, right? Because a lot of people will think like, oh, I want to become a millionaire, but then on the other side, their vibration, right, their emotional frequency doesn't really support it, right? So they have this goal, yet they have this goal right up here, but their emotional frequency of whether they don't feel like they deserve it doesn't match it, right? So they're never actually going to accomplish it. So those two books, I would say, are probably like really, really good. And then also David R. Hawkins actually has a really great book called Surrender, The Art of Letting Go. I think I've gone through that book last year. David R. Hawkins is a great author that talks a lot about, emotional frequency and so on. And those two things, the intellectual and then the emotional, once combined, really form that yin yang kind of an effect.
Right. And it can go in a positive way or a negative way. Because if you have negative emotions, negative thoughts, I mean, it's going to drag you down. But obviously, on the other way, flip side, if you have good thoughts and good emotions, I mean, that's like what you said, your emotional frequency is going to bring you to a new level. And then your relationships, your finances, your business, your family, all that will go up to that next level. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what is one thing you want to ask the audience? Is it check out your book? It could be, sign up on your website for something. What's one ask? It could be for them to start doing a daily mindfulness thing. What is one thing you want the audience to start doing?
So I would probably say if you guys wanna, well, maybe two things. Depends on where you're at, right? If let's just say you feel like you're emotionally good, like, hey, I don't need any knowledge on that spectrum, but I just want to increase my sales and maybe triple your sales or sales income and double your time off. Then just go to growyourmastermind.com to get my book, right? And I highly appreciate it and support it. And then through that process, actually, you at some point you probably will get to my free Facebook group, right? Which I'm going to actually be sharing, and we should connect on Facebook because I have that. So it's called Enlightened Entrepreneur Club, and I also actually recently got a domain, so it's enlightenedentrepreneur.club, right? So it's basically a free group where you just come in and I'm just focused on pouring this knowledge, right? Because then later this year I'm going to be planning on having Enlightened Entrepreneur Live event. So it's going to be a 3-day live event where I'm just going to go deep dive and also bring some speakers, bring some of my mentors too. And but I'm just going to be pouring entrepreneurship knowledge, business knowledge, mindset knowledge, enlightened body, enlightened sales, and enlightened marketing, and just all types of stuff. So one, if you want to triple your sales and double your time off, go to growyourmastermind.com, and I naturally suggest that you should do that immediately if you want to increase your sales. And I appreciate the book support. And then for increasing your knowledge, awareness, and becoming enlightened with the information so that you can actually do something with the information. Either go to Facebook and find Enlightened Entrepreneur Club, or just go to enlightenedentrepreneur.club, and then you'll get some free giveaways before you're directed to the group.
Awesome. And to wrap up the video, what is one question that I have not asked you that you think I should have asked? And then give me the answer. What's something that no one's ever asked you that you think, gosh, how come nobody's ever asked me this question? Because I could give so much knowledge if they would ask.
Yeah. So this is something that I touched on earlier, and that was on the responsibility part, right? So if maybe the question would be, if you were to share one more insight on what is one thing that it is going to propel, my growth, whether it's in business or personal growth or relationship, whatnot, is it would be willing to take 100% responsibility for everything. Doesn't matter if you actually have zero responsibility in that becoming, in that happening, but be willing just to absolutely take 100% responsibility for two reasons. Number one is this is where really everyone gets the ability and opportunity to claim 100% power, right? Because what that does on the flip side is if you don't claim responsibility, you're playing into the victim role, right? Because anytime we feel like, oh, I'm not responsible, like it's their fault, or it's not my fault, it's their responsibility, then essentially they're the ones to blame, and we're trying to wash off our responsibility. And what that does in turn is it makes you into a victim. You're perpetuating a victimhood, and with that, no success.
And it's hard to get out of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so on a I'll finish with a story, right, of where I first learned this. So I was like, I think 12 years old. I was still in Poland, and we're right before chemistry class, right? And young 12-year-old, what do you want to do as a 12-year-old, right? You want to belong to a group, right, with your buddies, right?
Right.
So silly me, I brought, those firecrackers, whatever that you just, go through like the matches and you just throw them and they just like crack. So,
Mhm.
we're on the third floor, took out the firecrackers, opened the window, and then everybody's like, whoa, whoa, so I like opened the firecrackers, threw it, and the wind took the firecracker and dropped it on the hood of a car, right between the window and the hood, in that little thing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God. And it cracked, right? Now, it didn't crack the window. It was just bam, because it was loud. It was also in like this kind of a building thing where it was just like one wall was open. So it was also super loud, right?
Right. The acoustics were just right.
The acoustics were just right. So I'm like super scared, 12 years old. I'm just like, holy cow. Thankfully, like the window didn't break. Of course, the bell rings for everybody to get into class. So we get back into class, and then as I'm sitting in the class, somebody walks in right into the class, and then obviously it had to be somebody with authority because the teacher all of a sudden stops. The teacher's kind of like, whoa, what's happening? And then the person walks up to the front of the class, and it was a gentleman. I forget his name now, but he goes like, somebody right before this class threw a firecracker out the window, and the firecracker ended up landing on my car. And he goes like, so here's what we're gonna do. He goes like, there's a couple of choices there. He goes like, whoever it is, there's a couple of choices you have, right? He goes like, you can either right after this class, come downstairs to my office and, say that it was you, and then we'll take appropriate actions from there. It doesn't sound good already, right? Or option number 2 is you don't have to do anything, and we're gonna we're gonna start an investigation, and then we'll find out who it is, and then you will for sure get in trouble then. So I'm just like, I'm screwed in both ways,
Right.
So I'm just like, God, I'm like, damn it. I'm like, why did I have to bring these firecrackers to?
Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So then like I'm in class, freaking out, the entire time, and and I forget who I was sitting next to. It's a friend of mine or something. But long story short, I'm like, I'm gonna be, scrutinized anyways, right? So I'm like, might as well just go there and just like fast forward the process if it's gonna happen anyways.
Right. Get it over with quick. It's like a Band-Aid. Yeah.
So I go downstairs, go to the office. My friends, like, I think it was my brother and then my friend are waiting outside. So I'm like, I walk in like all scared and shit, 12 years old, and and then I'm like, hi sir. I'm like, it was me that threw this firecracker. I'm like, I'm here to be responsible, and I think I said something along the lines of like, I'm ready to just
Face the
take whatever's given to
consequences.
me or something like that, something along those lines, right? And the guy, I think, was surprised that like I came down, right? And he goes like, so he was like in a little bit of surprise, and he goes like, well, he goes like, I want to thank you for coming down here and being like brave to just claim the responsibility for it. He goes like, this time, he goes like, I'm just gonna let you go. Just please don't do it again. And I'm just like,
No
yeah.
Oh my God.
You were doing the happy dance out of that room.
I was like so happy. I like sprinted out of there as soon as I could, just so he doesn't change his mind,
Yeah.
And that was like the very first like lesson on responsibility for me. It was because, hey, like it literally was. It was just like claim responsibility for what I need to be responsible for,
Mhm.
and then take
Take ownership of it.
take the
Yeah.
ownership of it, and then whatever the consequences are, be willing to deal with the consequences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was instilled in me at a very young age, and it's certainly what's allowed me to just propel much forward faster. And I'm nowhere near where I want to be. I like to look at the old Matthew McConaughey, or whatever, his one of his many speeches from college, but one specifically, people asked him, who's his hero, and he said that my hero is me 10 years from now or 20 years from now, right? That I'll
I
never
love
meet
that
my
answer.
hero because I'm always working on becoming better, right? So my so that would be my my last kind of finishing thoughts.
I love that. I love the story, and it had a good lesson at the end. So awesome. Well, everybody, again, this was Dominik Lipinski. I'm Dick Polipnick. You were listening to the Online Growth System show. Dom's going to be having this on some of his content, so make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment, whatever. He and I will be interacting with both channels so that we can be responding to content and interacting with you guys, the audience, because at the end of the day, you're what keeps us doing this kind of stuff, so we appreciate you guys. And Dominik, thanks for coming on the show, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. I appreciate you having me on. And then once my show and podcast is on, I'll definitely have you on mine.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much again.
I come from a town where most of the people are so close-minded. They go into school and they work in a job, but they don't even like it. I won't be put in a box. Nobody telling me what I should rock. Nobody telling me what I should drop. Cause I do what I want and just know I don't stop. Recording till 4 in the morning, they snoring. I'm pouring my soul into every story. I'm writing, producing, I mix it, I master. I'm building my craft and I'm not looking back. I've been going doing things I want to do when I want to.